Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Caitlin Tilley, and I'm the Food Security Manager at CSD, as well as the Lead Research Advisor for this class.
And I'm Grania Burrows. I'm one of the teaching fellows, and I'm the other advisor for this class.
Good morning. We are the Food Security Research Team, and I'm Zach.
I'm Max.
I'm Ashara.
I'm Alex.
I'm Jane.
Where's Cam? Shoot. Have you guys seen Cam?
I'm sorry.
Oh! There's Cam.
I was bringing in our local shipment of banana chips.
You got banana chips?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, these are banana chips. We eat these almost every day at the Island School for snack. They're kind of a staple here. Now I have a question for you. If you were to guess how many miles these banana chips traveled to get from wherever they came from to my hand, what would you say? I'm looking at your hands. Yep.
50 yards.
50 yards? That would make sense, right? We have banana trees on our campus. You've probably seen them. It's actually a little farther. It's 10,000 miles away. These are from the Philippines, which is on the other side of the world. You may be wondering why we started off our presentation with banana chips, but there's actually a pretty important reason. Can you tell us why, Cam?
Because we don't think about where our food comes from. I want you all to think about what you had on your plate for breakfast this morning. Can you think of where that would come from? This directly relates to our banana chip demonstration. A lot of the students here didn't know where their banana chips for snack were coming from. It was our goal to influence others to think about where their food comes from and why that's important.
Moving on to a global scale. 24% of all carbon emissions on Earth are due to the food system. To put this number into perspective, food waste alone accounts for more greenhouse gas emissions than any country in the world except for the US and China. 34% of all arable land and 69% of all available fresh water on Earth go towards the food system. When we waste food, we waste all the resources that go into putting food on your plate. There's a finite amount of these resources, which means there's a limit to the amount we can use. For these reasons, and also taking into account biodiversity loss and tropical deforestation, the food system is the #1 threat to nature, according to the World Wildlife Fund for Nature. If there isn't a significant change in how the current food system is being run, we will see irreversible damage to the environment.
Only 9% of the world understands the food system's impact on the environment. This statistic is not only shocking, it's terrifying. This is a system that we use almost every day, and food is such a big part of our lives that we thought it was important to invite our community into the minority of this statistic this semester. Our efforts were split into 3 parts: influencing sustainable food choices, improving local food perspectives, and limiting food waste. It was important to us that our community understood their impact on the environment and how their choices can change that.
So, can you please raise your hand if you think you can confidently define what food security means? Okay, perfect. That's why I'm here today. So, food security can be described using 3 simple words. The first word is availability. Availability in this case means that there's food present for you. The next word is access. Access means that you're able to pay for the food and that you're able to transport yourself to the food. The last word is utilization. Utilization is how you use the food and whether or not it is healthy.
So now we're going to be talking about the way this impacts the Bahamas directly. As you can see here, 92% of food in the Bahamas is imported, leaving only 8% to be sourced in this island. During our food security down island trip, we as a group observed that most supermarkets only supply packaged processed food, and unfortunately, this is the diet of many Bahamians. Going back to that 8%, if there were to be a food crisis, for example, natural disaster or trade embargoes, the entire island would have to feed off that 8%, which would not be enough to supply the entire country. Additionally, the Bahamas spends about $1 billion each year on importing food that could be grown here. Aloofra was once the breadbasket of the Bahamas and has the potential to cultivate crops that could supply the entire country. Also, shopping locally gives back locally, and that money would go straight to farmers here instead of having to go through loopholes to reach farmers from other countries.
Okay, so last semester, the Food Security Research Team came up with a plan to take us from 29% food secure all the way to 50% food secure by 2025. The way we measure food security here at the Island School is by how much of our food is sourced locally, which means it comes from within the Bahamas. Our goal as this semester's food security research team was to figure out the next step in this process. We concluded that the next step to take was to educate the community about food security. The way we have done so is by spreading awareness and educating the community through a variety of methods, which Jane is going to talk about momentarily. But first, here's Max to talk about some data analysis.
So the first step we decided to take was to figure out what the Island School community needed to be educated on. We decided to do this by creating a survey to understand people's mentality when they go into the dining hall, and also to understand what people understood about food security before the education. The survey was taken by 63 people, including Island School students, Deep Creek Middle School students, and CEIS staff and faculty. Out of these people, 68% strongly agreed or agreed that they had a good understanding of what food security meant. However, through additional questions in the survey, we realized people didn't truly understand where their food was coming from or understand how they could impact food security as a whole. "63% of people didn't understand where the local watermelon was coming from, and 92% of people didn't understand where the imported foods were coming from. 42% of people didn't agree that the choices they made at the dining hall would have an effect on the food served there in the future. This showed that people underestimated their abilities to have an effect on food security at the Island School, and also underestimated their effect that they could have on food security as a whole. For this reason, we decided to focus our educational curriculum on the ability individuals have to affect food security.
From those surveys, we created an educational curriculum and found ways to spread awareness. We did this through 3 main ways: posters, classes, and a community dinner. Our posters included information and facts about food security, and they're found in the bathrooms and the dining hall at the Island School. For our classes, we educated Deep Creek Middle School students along with Island School students. For our Deep Creek Middle School class, we had a brief presentation to keep the students engaged, and then we followed it by a food security related activity. For our Island School students, we had a similar presentation, but followed it by a different activity. We split the students into region-specific groups so each student could know what they could do specifically to take away from our food security presentation and be more food secure when they go home. Additionally, we also taught an EP group, a group of high schoolers from Canada, about food security, which was really interesting because we could see how enthusiastic they were about food security after our presentation. At our community dinner, we welcomed many people from the Island School community as well as the Deep Creek community. The food security team spent hours in the kitchen preparing the food along with the help of the kitchen staff. Before the dinner, we gave a brief speech about food security and how important it is to eat local, and we showcased our delicious local foods. We also would like to thank the farmers that we used some of the local foods from: Lady Di, Rodney Thompson, and Miss Taylor.
After rolling out our educational curriculum, we decided to create a post-survey to see how our efforts impacted our community. In this graph, you can see the difference between the pre- and post-survey of people's willingness to change their eating habits if doing so would be beneficial to the environment. There was a huge jump between the strongly disagree and disagree categories because of our education. It was decreased by half. These next graphs show the difference between people's confidence in drawing their peers' attention to their unsustainable eating habits. We were able to change the strongly agree and agree categories from 63% to 75%. Although this jump is only 12%, it was a significant sign that our education was working. Our educational curriculum was successful in many ways. This graph highlights how successful our signs and posters on campus were. About half of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed that our posters did change their mindset about food security. Another very positive impact we had in our community was our community dinner. Through our survey, we found that only 21% of the respondents did not attend our dinner, meaning we had almost about 250 attendants at the event. That was a major accomplishment for our team. We also found that 58% of the respondents that did attend the event agreed that their mindset or opinion about local foods were positively impacted. This taught us that this event was not only a great way to bring our community together, it was a great way to educate.
We have put together this video to give you guys a brief. We've put together this video, which consists of a few members from our community answering some questions to give you guys a brief example of how we have impacted their thoughts on food security.
I think learning about miles, especially with the olives we get at campus and the banana chips. How many miles they're actually traveling to get here.
Something that surprised me in the class was the fact that 91% of food in the Bahamas is imported, which I think is kind of crazy.
I was very surprised by the number of local farms that there are near everyone in the semester and how we were able to find local farms for every single person.
The community dinner was awesome, and it really opened sort of my perspective to the sort of breadth of food we have available to us from really not that far away, 5 miles to Rodney's farm.
Buy foods that are locally grown and only what I need and not stuff that's like not going to be eaten.
So, here we are in the middle of our presentation. We've narrowed the scope of food security from a global level down to the Bahamas and then to the island school. You may be wondering if we can get more specific from here. Well, we can. For this next stage, I want you guys to look to your left and to your right, because the next level of our presentation is this room and all of you in it. So to center us here, I just want to take a big deep breath in and out. Okay, thank you. You guys are all now part of an important minority. If we've done our job and you haven't been dozing off after a long morning of presentations, that hopefully means that you're informed about an issue that 91% of the rest of the world needs to hear. Parents, we've made 2 surveys, rolled out a community dinner for 250 people, talked outside of these events whenever possible so that your kids would go home with the same passion for eating sustainably as I know we will. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but we eat a lot at home. Thank you for funding that, by the way. Our impressive appetites make each family in this room a powerful influencer in our global food system. With this power, we have 2 options. We're at a crossroads. Option 1 is that we go home and continue to contribute to our current unsustainable food system. This is what I know I was doing before I got here, and I also know it's by far the easier of the 2 options, as we don't need to change our lifestyles at all. Now, option 2 is a little bit different. Here, we use our collective education and our newfound knowledge to rethink the way we interact with food and change the food system on a global level as individuals. Now, I know mitigating global environmental issues as individuals seems pretty out of reach. But food is unique in that we interact with it every day, on average 3 times a day. So that makes food a much more easy means of creating positive change in the world than really anything else. And that takes us to the next level of our presentation, which is what we're going to do when we go home, which Max is going to talk about.
So, what can you do? Food security is something everyone faces every day of their life. We're constantly making choices about what food we're going to eat. Being food secure entitles people to eat local. Almost all of you have the ability to do this. Some things you can do are purchase foods from local farmers markets, read labels in grocery stores to understand where your food is coming from, and even grow some of your own food. Another thing you can do is to reduce your waste is to only buy the food that you need and make sure you're eating all of it.
Now we're going to ask you some questions to bring this presentation back to the global level. Raise your hand if after this presentation you have a better understanding of what food security means. That's great. Now raise your hand if you have some ideas on how to live sustainably after hearing this presentation as well. That's awesome. That shows that we've been doing our job, and hopefully you can share with others what you've learned in this presentation today.
We'd like to take a quick moment to thank our research advisors, Caitlin and Grania, along with Megan in the communications department, Jaguel and the kitchen staff, and Camera Goose, the head of research.
We also want to thank everyone who filled out our surveys and took part in our video. And then also, we want to thank everyone here. This presentation hasn't just been us telling you what we've done this semester. It's also a continuation of our job as educators and as leaders in affecting change. So I want to thank all of you for being part of that. Questions? Right here.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. I'm curious to know what are the crops that are grown most successfully in the Bahamas, and what sort of government incentives are there for biodynamic farming or sustainable farming generally? Because I think that the push for that was
So the question is, what are the local crops that are grown here that we want to be utilizing? And are there any kind of government things in place to encourage farmers? There's so many crops that are grown here, and a lot of them are seasonal. So actually bananas are year-round, mangoes, pineapple, genips. I don't know if you've seen genips before, they're delicious. Those are all more seasonal. And we also have crops like onions, tomatoes, things that don't have to grow that deep in the ground because the soil here isn't that great. But there are plenty of crops here that we utilize. You actually ate lionfish last night that was sourced from the Bahamas, and that's an incentive that we're all trying to put on fishermen here, is to hunt lionfish because they're an invasive species and they're local and they taste pretty good. So there's plenty that we can source.
So adding on to what Alex said, there's also ways to grow different foods that aren't native to this place. So as you can see on campus, we have an aquaponics system where we grow lettuce, so salad, if you guys have had that here, that's grown locally. And also greenhouses can be used in places where you might think foods won't be able to grow. So that's just, if you think foods can't grow in a certain place, there are other options if the soil isn't strong or if the climate isn't correct.
Is there any awareness or movement to change the soil quality through like regenerative agriculture here in the Bahamas?
So the question was, is there any, can you repeat that?
Awareness around regenerative agriculture to improve soil. I'm just interested in the soil quality issues that you're bringing up.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. So one thing that we've seen, we went down island, which actually means like north up Eleuthera, to check out some farms on the island. And one thing that we saw at a local farm, the farmer's name is LaFleur, great guy. He used seaweed to add nutrients to the soil. And there's a lot of things like that we're doing here. CSD, what food security is a part of, is big on permaculture, which is a type of agriculture that restores the land as fast as it uses the materials from the land. And that's something that Eleuthera can do while it's trying to increase the amount of agriculture that is done here. Yeah, right there.
As we think about eating out on Saturday as a family, is there a store or a particular restaurant that you would recommend that's in line with these efforts?
We are not that aware of the restaurants around here and there. We mostly eat over there. But we can say that if you see fish like conch and grouper, those are local, but they're also endangered species. So like if you want to give it a try, maybe, but also try to stay away from foods like that because they're going extinct here. Yeah, right over there.
As far as the Deep Creek Middle School have farmers come in, educate and how to bridge the gap between the generations that's growing up here to realize what's the best source of food, or have you had either farmers going or they have really had the opportunity to have trips to the farms or anything else?
Okay, so there hasn't been any communication between Deep Creek Middle School and farmers. We did have a class. It was just our food security research team. Part of our legacy project is hiring a local food coordinator, and we're not sure what that, if that will be included in that job, but it might be like an option or a possibility in the future.
What did you serve at the dinner?
I'll have Janix or Cam. What do you?
The question was, what did we serve at our community dinner? And we had tilapia from our aquaponic system, potatoes, pumpkin, cookies that were made from jelly, pineapple jelly from a local farm around here, pesto made from our aquaponic system as well, and some teas we made from these great plants right next to us.